Hello everyone and welcome to my channel MiTutorials. This is the week 3 of the Introduction to Python series on my channel. In the last week's tutorial, we went through the different types of variables. We went through how to create a list. We went through how to combine lists. We learned how to create a tuple. We learned how to create a dictionary. And in this week, we will be going through conditional statements. We will be going through looping statements, which is the for loop, while loop. And then we'll be learning how to create functions within Python. And also we will be learning to create a Lambda function within Python. So let's get started with this tutorial. So the first thing that we will be learning today is our conditional statements. So what are conditional statements? In our life, we make a lot of decisions every single time. For example, let's say you want to go to a particular restaurant, whether you like that restaurant, yes or a no, that is a decision making that you are making in your life, whether you want to go to that restaurant or not. Let's say, for example, you want to buy a car. Let's say you want to buy a Hyundai car and you make a decision that you want to go with the brand Hyundai or not. So these are the decision making statements that you make in your real life. Something similar to that happens in the coding as well. On the same lines, the decision-making statements can be written within Python using the if condition. Now let's look at the general syntax of the if condition over here. So we have the if condition over here followed by the test expression and then there is a colon. And on the next line, we have some space over here and then the body of the if statement. And the indentation is very important in Python, otherwise the code will not run. And then on the next line, we have the else statement with a colon. And then on the next line, we have some indent again, and then the body of the else statement. So let's look at an example how we can create the conditional statement. Let's say we have a scenario over here. You're in the market to buy a laptop and you have a certain budget to buy the laptop. Now let's say you looked at various laptops and you finalized on one laptop which costs 100K. Based on the budget that you have for the laptop, we need to know whether this particular laptop fits in your budget or not. So let's try to do this in Python. So what we are doing over here is first we are assigning the value 100K to the variable called as laptop price. Okay, and then we have another variable called as budget, wherein we are trying to create an input where it says enter your budget, and it creates basically an input form where you can type in your budget manually. And then it is taking this entire input over here and converting into an integer value. The reason why we are converting into an integer value is because let's say if you enter 100K as an example, with this 100K, we will not be able to perform a mathematical calculation to know whether this 100K is less than this particular value or not. So it's important that we have the entered value as an integer itself. Alright. So this particular value that you enter gets assigned to the variable called as budget. And now the conditional statement begins. So we have our if statement, and if budget is less than the laptop price. Now this budget value will come in when we run this code and it will ask us to enter the value. That value will get assigned to the variable budget. It will check, let's say if that value is 50,000, it will check that if budget 50,000 is less than the laptop price, which is 100K, and it will print that, sorry, laptop is out of your budget. Now let's say if the budget is higher than the laptop price, meaning that this particular condition is not satisfied, that is when it will ignore to print this statement and it will straight jump into this else statement and print laptop is within your budget. If my budget is less than the laptop price, it is going to print this statement. If my budget is greater than the laptop price, it will print this statement. So let's run this particular code and see what happens. So I'm going to click on run code. So it's asking us to enter budget. So I'm going to enter, let's say 50,000 over here and press enter. So it says, sorry, laptop is out of your budget. This is as expected because our budget is less than the laptop price. Now let's say I have a higher budget and I'm going to enter a budget of, let's say 1,10,000 and press enter. Now it says that laptop is within your budget. So it took the entered value, it went into the if statement and checked if this particular condition is satisfied. And this particular condition was not satisfied, so it came to my else statement and it printed this particular value, which is laptop is within your budget. Let's look at another example now. So the price of the Dell laptop is 50,000, HP is 55,000 and Lenovo is 45,000. Let's write a conditional statement to check the price of these laptops. I'm taking an input as the variable which says that enter the brand name of the laptop. Okay, now I have my conditional statements. It begins with if brand equals to, right? Now in Python, when you say equals to, when you did equals to here, you are assigning the value which is on the right hand side to the variable which is on the left hand side, right? So for Python to know that you are actually looking at is equals to, or you want to check with the equals operator, then you need to enter the equal sign 2 times, something like this, and that is when it will know that we are checking if this particular variable is equals to the value Dell, right? We are not assigning the Dell value to the variable brand over here, but we are checking if the value which is assigned to the variable brand is Dell or not. So if my brand is equals to Dell, then I want to print the price of the Dell laptop is 50,000. In this example that we looked at, we only had 2 options, whether the laptop is out of your budget or within your budget. But over here, that is not the case. We have multiple else statement. If it is not Dell, then it can be HP. If it is not HP, it can be Lenovo, right? If it is not Lenovo, then it can be something else. So in Python, we have the elif statement over here, which will go on to check multiple conditions. So if this particular expression satisfies the condition, then it is going to print this statement. Elif, if brand is equals to HP, then print this. Elif, else if brand is equals to Lenovo, then print the price of Lenovo laptop is 45,000. Else, this is where we end. If nothing of this matches, right, then we say brand not found. So let's run this code now. So it says enter the brand name of the laptop. Let's say I enter Dell here and press enter. So it says the price of the Dell laptop is 50,000 because the condition meets here, and it prints this particular statement. Now let's run this code again, and then I'm going to type in the brand Lenovo and press enter. Now it says the price of the Lenovo laptop is 45,000. So it came over here, it checked this particular expression, it did not match. It came to the elif statement here, it came here to check the condition, it did not match, and then it came again to the next elif condition over here. Here the condition matched, and then it printed this particular statement. Now let's run this code again. Let's type in some other value which is not part of the list in the elif statement over here. If I press enter now, it says brand not found, because it is not able to check the value IBM in any of these variables that we have over here under the elif or if statement. So it comes to the else statement and it prints brand not found. I hope this is very clear, and I'm explaining in such a way that it is easier to understand. If you're not able to follow, if you think I'm too fast or you're not able to follow the tutorials, please do let me know in the comment section, and I will try to improve as much as I can. Now let's look at the looping statements. Let's look at for loop. So just before we get into for loop, I just want you to get familiar with this particular code over here. So what this particular code is doing is, so if I run this code over here, the output is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, the last value is excluded, just like how we saw earlier, right? So this is similar to writing something like this, right? So if I run this code over here, it will get me a similar output. Now you learned earlier that if the values are enclosed within square bracket, then that is a list, right? So that is exactly what we have over here. So this is like the short code of writing something similar to this. We don't have the first argument over here, but Python understands that we're trying to create a range from 0 to 5, and then the last value over here, 5, the value 5 over here is excluded and this is included. So if I run this, I've got the output as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Likewise, I can do similar things like this. I can do a range of 5 to 20. 20 is excluded, 19, and so it gets the value until 19. And then I can also do something similar to this, but this time I want in multiples of 2. It starts from 0, goes up to 10. Remember, 10 is excluded, and I need the values in the range or in the multiples of 2. If I run this code over here, I will get the output 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Remember that 10 is excluded. If I need the 10th value also in the code, I need to change this to 11 and then run this. And now I'm going to get the value 10 as well in the list. And something similar to this, I have in multiples of 5 up to 50. 50 is excluded, so it returns the value until 45. All right. Now that you're familiar with this, let's get into the for loop. So we have a variable over here called as laptop price, and the value assigned to that particular variable is 50,000. So what does a for loop do? For loop is used to run a piece of code certain number of times, right? It will iterate over that particular list or a range or a tuple or a dictionary based on whatever you enter. Let's look at this particular code and you will understand what exactly is for loop doing. Now the way we write the for loop is it begins with for. I'm saying I in range 4, 20, 4. First, let's understand what this piece of code is doing here. So it's creating a range of values starting from 4 up till 19 in the multiples of 4. So let's say it's created a range here 4, 8, 12, 16. And then it says for I in range, our range is this. So it says I, so it takes the first value over here, which is 4. So I is equals to 4. So the value 4 gets assigned to the variable I, and then it performs all of my calculation over here. So once it has completed all of this particular calculation, it goes back to the for loop again, and now my I becomes 8, which is the second value in my range that we calculated over here. And now again, it will execute this piece of code until here and then goes back again because we still have remaining values. So now the I value becomes 12. It again executes this piece of code, goes back again into the for loop, and now the I value becomes 16. And again runs this piece of code and goes back again, and now there are no more values that can get assigned to the variable I, so that's when the code will break and it will stop executing. So this is what the for loop does. It executes this piece of code again and again until we have the values in this particular list. So what's happening here is the price of the laptop is affected with the RAM that you select. For every RAM increase, that percent of price get increased in the laptop. So laptop price 50,000 multiplied by 4 divided by 100, which is 4%. And then that particular value gets assigned to a variable additional price. And then we have another variable called as new price, where we are assigning the value of laptop price 50,000 plus the additional price. And then we have the print statement which says the laptop price after upgrading RAM to, and then we have a variable which is I. In this case, in the first instance, it is 4. GB is new price. So let's run this code and see what happens. So when I execute this, now I've got all 4 values as an output over here. So the laptop price after upgrading RAM to 4 GB is 52,000. The laptop price after upgrading RAM to 8 GB is 54,000. Likewise, the last statement over here, it says the laptop price after upgrading RAM to 16 GB is 58,000. So this is what for loop does. So it iterates over the code again and again until the values are met. For example, if I change this to 21 and if I run this, now it goes and calculates the laptop price for the RAM 20 GB as well, and it says that the costing or the laptop price is 60,000. Now let's look at the while loop. While loop is similar to for loop, but it performs a little differently. In this case, let's assign a value to the variable laptop price 50,000, and then I'm defining I value over here where my I is equals to 4. That is where it begins with. And then the way I write the while statement is I just say while I is less than or equals to 16. All right, and then there is a semicolon over here, and then the same code that I have over here, I have just copy pasted that over here. And at the end of the code, what I'm doing here is I'm assigning value I and then adding 4 to it, because over here I had the multiples of 4, and over here I can just do I plus 4, assign that variable to I, which will now become, so it begins with 4, my I is 4, and then it adds 4 more to it, so that becomes 8, and the value 8 gets assigned to the variable I. So when it goes back here, the I value becomes 8, while I is less than or equals to 16. Yes, it is less than 16, and then this piece of code gets executed, and then again now my I value here is 8, and then 4 gets added to it, so this I value becomes 12, and it goes back here, it checks, yes, it is less than 16, executes this code, again comes here, now this becomes 16, and then goes back, executes, and then comes again, and now this becomes 20, it goes back, and then it checks, no, I value is not less than 16, so it ends the code over here. Now alternatively, instead of writing a piece of code like this, I can also write something like this, where it says I plus is equals to 4. I don't have to again define I plus 4. I can only say plus is equals to 4, meaning that it will automatically add 4 to the value I and gets assigned to that value I. So if I run this code again, and now we are getting the same output as we got here in the for loop. And if I want to change this, I can simply change this to, let's say, 24 and run this piece of code, and now this will give me until 24 over here. Now let's head to the next topic, which is functions. Function is a piece of code which can be used to perform a certain action, and that can be called over again and again. Let's say you are performing some calculations, and these are very complex calculations wherein multiple columns are involved and all of that. So instead of writing that formula again and again, you can create that function within Python and call that particular function again and again based on your requirement. So let's look at an example, and it will be easier for you to understand. So first, let's go through the syntax of the function. So we start with defining a function, and the short form we use here is def, and then we assign a function name and pass in the parameters within that particular function, and then within the brackets we pass in the parameters, and then we have a colon over here, and on the next line we have the calculation. We can write the code over there, and then we have our statements. So let's look at an example now. You'll be able to understand this better. So let's define a function over here. So I'm calling the function def, and then followed by add the name of the function, and then I'm passing few parameters within it. I have num1, which is an integer. I have num2, which is also an integer. So what do I want to do here? So I'm creating a new variable here called as num3, and I'm performing an addition on these two integer values, which is num1 and num2, and then I'm returning the value num3 over here. Now you will see that indenting is very important in Python. So just because this is not indented correctly, I'm getting this particular underlining error over here. It says unexpected indentation. So I'm gonna just press a backspace over here, and now that error should go away. So if I run this code over here, my function gets defined. I've defined this particular function. I can add a new code over here. I can call the function add, and I can pass in the values over here, 200, which is an integer, comma, and then I can type in 300. So if I run this code over here, I am calling the function add, which is accepting two parameters over here. That is what I have over here. It is taking these two parameters, and then it is creating a new variable called as num3 and performing this particular calculation, assigning this value to num3, and over here I am returning the value num3, right? So I have now called the variable add, and within the parenthesis over here I'm passing the parameters 200, 300, and it returns the value here which as 500. Now what happens if I add another value or a parameter over here? If I run this, it says that there is an error. It takes only 2 positional arguments, but we're given 3. Likewise, since we have defined this to be an integer, I cannot enter any string value or a text value over here. It says that it's invalid. It does not take that particular input. But if I just give the parameters and the integers as integer over here, it returns the value as 230. It performs this calculation and returns the value. Now let's create another function over here. I'm creating a new function, defining and then followed by the name of the function, which is laptop spec. I'm passing in multiple parameters within this particular function. I have brand, I have RAM, HDD, hard disk, size of the laptop and the price of the laptop. Okay, and then I'm printing the statement over here. What is it that I'm printing? The brand. Brand here is dynamic value. It will pick up the value from the variable, and then the laptop has RAM, again is the dynamic value from the variable, GB of RAM, hard disk, etc. So all of this is defined over here. So I can run this code over here. A new function called as laptop spec is now created. Now I can call the function laptop spec and passing the values within that particular function. So I'm first passing the brand name over here, which is Dell. Notice that this is in single quote because this is a string. And then we have the numbers here, and we don't need to enter the values here in the single quote. So I have my RAM size, I have my hard disk size, which is 500 GB, and then I have my size, which is 16, and then I have the price of that particular laptop. So if I run just this code over here, it will now return the output as the Dell laptop has 16 GB of RAM, 500 GB of hard disk space. The size of the screen is 16 inches. The price of the laptop is 65,000. Now, let's say you want to change the values over here. So instead of doing it again and again or writing the entire piece of code again and again, you can simply copy this, create a new code, create a new line of code over here and change this to, let's say, HP. And let's say if this becomes 1000 GB, and if this becomes 32 GB, and if this becomes 75,000, and if I run this code over here, you will get the output as the HP laptop has 16 GB of RAM, 1000 GB of hard disk, etc., etc. Let's look at another example of the function. Now, the reason why I have multiple examples of these functions is basically to help you understand how the functions work. And when I go through these multiple examples, I hope it is easier for you guys to understand as well. So please let me know in the comment section what do you think about it. So let's start over here with our third function. We're defining the function def over here, and the name of the function is L_price, and I'm passing a parameter within this called as RAM. And then my laptop price here is 50,000. My additional price, remember we did this in the while loop and the for loop. I have the same statement over here. Laptop price is 50,000. My additional price is doing that calculation. And then the laptop price plus additional price gets assigned to a new price, and then it's printing the value over here. So let's call the L price over here. My RAM value is 32. If I run this, oops, I've not run this line of code over here. Let me define the function first and then run this. Now my laptop price after upgrading RAM to 32 GB is 66,000. So if I change this 32 here to just 8 and run this code again, now this will say the laptop price after upgrading RAM to 8 GB is 54,000. So these functions are super cool, especially if you want to define some custom tasks based on your requirement. Now let's look at the last topic for today, which is the Lambda function. Lambda is another way of defining a function. They are basically used to perform small tasks or calculations, and lambdas are usually defined by the word lambda, whereas the function is defined by the keyword def, but lambda is defined by the word lambda. Within lambda, we cannot use a return statement, and also notice that with function we passed in the parenthesis here and parameters within it, but with lambda we don't really have that. So we are creating a function called as price after upgrade and assigning this particular function to it. So we are writing the code as lambda followed by a variable which is RAM, and a colon over here, and then I'm performing the calculation like exactly what we did over here, the laptop price with the multiplied by the RAM divided by 100. And now we can call this particular function here with price after upgrade followed by the parameter, which is 16. That's the only parameter that we have in this case. So if I run this code over here, the lambda function gets assigned to the variable price after upgrade, and now if I run price after upgrade, it is now returning the value as 58,000. Notice that this is a little lengthy piece of code, but I have this in just one single line over here. These are used to perform small calculations or tasks within Python. Let's look at another example over here. I can also have a print statement within Lambda. What I'm doing here is creating a function, price after upgrade, calling the Lambda function, passing a parameter called as RAM over here, and printing a statement, the price of the laptop after upgrading the RAM to RAM is the variable over here and GB, and then followed by the calculated value over here. So if I run this function, a new function gets created, and if I run this particular function with the value 16 over here, it says the price of the laptop after upgrading the RAM to 16 GB is 58,000. Likewise, if I change the value and run this piece of code over here, it will now return the price of the laptop after upgrading the RAM to 32 GB is 66,000. So with this, I would like to end this tutorial. I hope you guys are able to follow the tutorials that I'm creating on Python, and I hope you are also practicing enough to learn Python. So that's it guys in this particular tutorial. Thank you so much for watching.